Hare Krishna devotees and with Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Start with Mangalacharan. Om Jnanatamidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminate Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Okay, so last week we had a very auspicious Balaram Purnima. We were reciting the Balaram Balabhadra Stotra Kavach, and this week we're going to be celebrating the most magnanimous Shri Krishna Janmashtami. So this week let's recite prayers glorifying Lord Shri Krishna. So I'm posting the link in the chat. We'll do this Chorashtakam. So as we were singing, as we were praying to Lord Balaram for protection last week, so let's continue to pray to Lord Krishna that may he rid us from all the different anarthas that are there in our heart, so that we can stop the tendencies that comes along with the anarthas, which is to commit aparadhas, offenses. So if the anarthas are removed, then the aparadhas will also be removed. So Chorashtakam by Srila Bilvamangal Thakur. Okay. Vraje prasiddham navanita chauram gopangananam chadukula chauram aneka janmarjita papa chauram chaura graganyam purusham namami Shri Radhikaya hridayasya chauram navam buddha shyamalakanti chauram Padashritanam cha samasta chauram chauragraganyam purusham namami akinchani kritya padashritam yah karoti bhikshum patigehahinam kenapyaho bheshana chaura idrag drishta shruto va na jagatrayepi Yadiyyanamapi haratyashesham giri prasaran api paparasan ascharyarupo nanu chaura idrig drishta shruto va namaya kadapi dhanam chamanam chatathendriyani pranamscha hritva mama sarvameva Palayase kutra drito dyachaura Tvam bhakti damna simaya niruddha Chinatsi gauram yamapasha bandham Bhinatsi bhimam bhavapasha bandham Chinatsi sarvasya samasta bandham Naiva manobhakta kritam tu bandham Manmanase tamasarasi ghore Karagrahe dukkamaye nibaddha Labhasvahe chaura hari chiraya Svachaurya dosho chitameva dandam Karagrahe vasasadarade madiye Madbhakti pasha dridabandhana nischala san Tvam Krishna he pralaya koti shatantarepi Sarvasva chaura hridayan nahi mochayami Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Chaurashtakam ki jai. Shri Bilwa Mangal Thakur ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, who would like to read the translations for this wonderful prayer?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. I offered my this is one of the most favorite of mine, Prabhuji. So nice it is. I offered my respectful obeisances to that foremost of thieves who is famous in Raja as the butter thief, and he who steals the gopis' clothes, and who, for those who take shelter of him, steals the sins which have accrued over many lifetimes. I offer my respectful obeisances to the foremost of thieves who steals Srimati Radhika's heart, who steals the dark luster of a fresh rain cloud, and who steals all the sins and sufferings of those who take shelter of his feet. He turns his surrendered devotees into paupers and wandering homeless beggars. Alas, such a fearsome thief has never been seen or heard of in all the three worlds. Mere utterance of his name purges one of a mountain of sins. Such an astonishingly wonderful thief I have never seen or heard of anywhere. O thief, having stolen my wealth, my honor, my senses, my life, and my everything, where can you run to? I have caught you with the rope of my devotion. You cut the You cut the terrible noose of Yamaraja, who severed the dreadful noose of material existence, and you slash everyone's material bondage, but you are unable to cut the knot fastened by your own loving devotees. O stealer of my everything, O thief, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison house of my heart, which is very fearful due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance, and there for a very long time you will remain, receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery. O Krishna, thief of my everything, the noose of my devotion remaining forever tied, you will continue to reside in the prison house of my heart because I will not release you for millions of aeons. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for so nice reading. Yes, it almost felt like you have caught him in your heart. Yes, so just like Krishna was born in a prison, right?
It's very difficult, Prabhuji, for him to. He's
Yes, yeah, that's why we're seeking shelter, we're seeking protection from Balaramji, from Dauji first, because when Balaramji comes, he sets the stage, like he cleans up all the anarthas in our heart. So that's what we prayed to him last week, so that when he comes after all the anarthas are killed, then the seventh child is Balaram. He comes and he clears whatever residual things are there, so that then Krishna can come as the eighth child in the womb of Mother Devaki. So similarly, those anarthas, like the guards of the prison of Kamsa, right? So they go to sleep, or when Balaramji and Krishna come, right? So similarly, we pray to Krishna that, yeah, when he comes, then all these remaining or residual anarthas that we may have still in our heart, he can steal them away. And he gives us that blessings, because he says, like we were saying at the center, that the name of Lord is not different from Krishna. So we say, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so nicely says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Eka Krishna Nam Kare Sarva Papakshay. So whatever sins we have, the tendency to commit sins, these anarthas are the root cause by which we commit more and more sins, aparadhas. So when he steals away these anarthas, then the aparadhas go away. So yeah, so Eka Krishna Nam, so Krishna Nam that we take every morning, it's like a everyday exercise that we have to do. It's like everyday tonic. So when we do that, then all those tendencies are gone. And we also complete our Navavida Bhakti, Purna Hoy, Nam Haite Hai. So just by taking holy names of the Lord every morning, every day, when we chant our 16 rounds sincerely, then yes, slowly and slowly we'll see that the tendency to commit those aparadhas are gone, because the anarthas will fade away. Just like those guards of Kamsa's prison house fell asleep. Okay, Hare Krishna. So let's continue. Thank you, Mataji, once again. And we'll continue Prabhupada Leelamrit. So, of course, Prabhupada Leelamrit, we are reading chapter 31, threat against ISKCON. A lot of things are going on. Prabhupada is feeling sick, both physically and mentally, because of the disturbances created by his neophyte disciples. And again, that is one of the reasons why it is very important, like Prabhupada was saying, that our sadhana, our regulated devotional practice should be very, very, very strong, without which, if we try to do devotional service, also there are chances that we will commit a lot of aparadhs. So again, it's not a deterrent, but the best thing, ideal thing, like he was teaching his disciples, was to get up in the morning, do their Mangala Arati, do their Bhagavad, read their Bhagavatam, chant the prayers like we're chanting the prayers in the morning, do our Arati. Right? When we do all of these, then we go out and we preach, or we do whatever seva that we are trying to do, we will be protected. But without that, if we think that we are advanced and we are going to do whatever we want to do, there are a lot of chances that we may commit a lot of aparadhs. So that is very important. So let's continue. Chapter 31. Prabhupada is now has left America because of the disturbances, and he is at the same time, as a loving father, he is still guiding and directing his disciples, but he has to show, to lead by example. Like we say, an acharya always leads by example. He is now taking his sannyas disciples to India via Japan and Hawaii. So now he's in Japan right now with his sannyasi disciples, so that he can teach them that as sannyasis, what is their responsibility? The responsibility is to travel and preach, versus staying at one place and trying to get hold of or serve anything for themselves, like trying to serve their personal ambitions. Instead of serving personal ambition, they should be serving the Lord collectively. Okay, so let's continue from here. For hours, Prabhupada drilled his disciples. He would pose a Mayavadi argument, then ask his disciples to defeat it. If they failed, he would defeat it himself. He stressed that the relationship between the spiritual master and disciple was eternal, not because the Guru was Krishna, but because he was the confidential servant of Krishna eternally. A bona fide spiritual master never says that he is Krishna or that Krishna is impersonal. The devotees began to understand how the offenses of minimizing Srila Prabhupada's position were products of Mayavadi philosophy. For the Mayavadi, to increase devotion to the Guru is unnecessary. If individual relationships are ultimately illusion, why increase the illusion? If the master-servant relationship is ultimately illusion, then the less the disciple sees his Guru as master and himself as servant, the more he is advancing. The Mayavadi philosophy was a subtle and insidious poison. At least Prabhupada had been spared the pain of being personally present in New Vrindavan to witness the Mayavadi rantings of certain of his disciples and the appalling display of ignorance of most of the others. He had a small entourage and was on his way to preach. While here in Tokyo, he would try to obtain many Back to Godhead magazines and Krishna books to take with him. Prabhupada observed Janmashtami at his apartment by having disciples read aloud to him from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, throughout the day. If they kept, might be able to finish the book in one day. The devotees had decorated Prabhupada's room with leaves and flowers strung from the ceiling and along the walls, and Prabhupada sat on a thin mattress behind his low desk, hearing the pastimes of Krishna. At 9 p.m., after fasting all day, the devotees were still reading to him when he asked if they would be able to finish the book by midnight. The devotees replied that they would not. Then you stop and I will read. Prabhupada opened a Sanskrit volume of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and for the next 2 hours chanted the Sanskrit verses. You cannot understand the Sanskrit, he said, but I know you can feel. The verses are so potent that just by hearing one can be purified. During the reading, Kirtananda Swami and Kartikeya Swami cooked a feast in the kitchen. At midnight, the devotees served Srila Prabhupada the Janmashtami feast. Taking only a few bites, he watched his disciples eat heartily. The next day was Vyasa Puja, Prabhupada's 74th birthday, and he went to the Tokyo ISKCON temple. The temple was only 2 rooms, one for living, one for worshipping, with Japanese grass mats on the floor. Prabhupada sat to the right of the altar, looking at Lord Jagannath, while his disciples sat on the floor before him, singing Gurvashtaka prayers, glorifying the spiritual master. None of them, however, knew exactly how to conduct the Vyas Puja ceremony, and after a while they ended the Kirtana. In the painfully awkward moments that followed, the devotees realized they were supposed to do something special. But what? Prabhupada appeared angry. Don't you have Pushpayatra? Isn't Prasadam ready? The devotees looked at one another. This is not Vyas Puja, Prabhupada said. You have not been to Vyas Puja before? Don't you know how to celebrate the Vyas Puja? How to honor the spiritual master? One of the sannyasis began to cry. Tamal Krishna, Prabhupada said. Didn't you see how I observed my Guru Maharaj's birthday? Where is Pushpa? Pushpa is Sanskrit for flowers. Pushpa? Pushpa? Tamal Krishna decided Prabhupada must mean Pushparna, a fancy rice dish. I'm not sure, he said. What kind of Vyas Puja is this with no Pushpa? Prabhupada asked. We can get some, Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna offered. Tamal Krishna grabbed Sudama. Prabhupada wants Prashadam. He wants Pushpana rice. They ran into the kitchen and hurriedly started the rice. Meanwhile, in the temple, the devotees struggled through their version of a Vyas Puja ceremony. Kirtananda Swami stood and began to read aloud from the introduction of Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, which included a short biography of Prabhupada, but Prabhupada interrupted, scolding his disciples for concocting and for acting improperly. If you don't know, he said, then why didn't you ask me how to do this properly? The Japanese guests present didn't understand English, but they could see the spiritual master was disturbed. Prabhupada explained that in devotional service, everything must be done properly, according to the Parampara method, without concocting. We will observe Vyas Puja again tomorrow, he said. Come to my room. I will tell you what to do. The next day, after a simple traditional ceremony, the devotees felt ecstatic. Afterward, they agreed, when one displeases the spiritual master, there is no happiness. But as soon as the spiritual master is pleased, the disciple becomes blissful. The Janmashtami Vyas Puja festival in New Vrindavan had become a nightmare. Hundreds of devotees had converged there from the East Coast, with many others from California and even Europe. They had come for a blissful festival, but instead had found Srila Prabhupada's newly initiated sannyasis expounding a devastating philosophy. The sannyasis, speaking informally to the groups here and there, would explain how the devotees had offended Prabhupada and how he had subsequently withdrawn his mercy. The sannyasis revealed their special insights that Prabhupada was actually God, that none of his disciples had recognized him as such, and that all of them, therefore, beginning with the sannyasis, were guilty of minimizing his position. And that was why Prabhupada had left for India. He had withdrawn his mercy from his disciples. The devotees were devastated. None of them knew what to say in reply. The sannyasis, by their preaching, had projected gloom everywhere, which was proper, they said. Everyone should feel guilty and realize that they had lost the grace of their spiritual master. No use trying to cheer one another by chanting Hare Krishna or eating a feast. Everyone should accept the bitter medicine. Although Prabhupada had given his disciples 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as Bhagavad Gita as it is, the nectar of devotion, teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and other literature, none of the devotees were well versed in them. Many devotees wondered if the philosophy the sannyasis were preaching was correct, but none of them knew enough of the scriptures to immediately refute it. The devotees turned to the new GBC men, Prabhupada's appointed leaders and guardians of ISKCON. The GBC, along with the other senior devotees, began carefully searching through Prabhupada's books to ascertain exactly what he had said about the position of the spiritual master. Then Hayagriva announced that a letter had just arrived from Srila Prabhupada in Tokyo. As soon as the devotees all gathered under the pavilion roof to hear, Hayagriva read aloud, My dear sons and daughters. And then Prabhupada listed almost all the New Vrindavan residents. The devotees immediately felt a wave of hope. Just to hear Prabhupada say, My dear sons and daughters, was a great relief. Hayagriva continued to read, Please accept my blessings. Prabhupada hadn't rejected them. The letter went on to say that Srila Prabhupada was pleased with the work of the New Vrindavan devotees and he promised to come and visit them. Soon he would send for other devotees to join him in India, he said. As he described what preaching in India would be like, the devotees became caught up in the momentum of Srila Prabhupada's preaching spirit. They cheered, they felt blissful. Then Prabhupada specifically referred to the difficulty facing ISKCON. Purge out of New Vrindavan the non-Vrindavan atmosphere that has entered. His letter turned the tide against the Mayavadi teachings. The GBC then called a meeting of all disciples in the temple room. Reading selections from the Nectar of Devotion, they established that the spiritual master, although not God, should be honored as much as God because he is the confidential servant of God. Several senior devotees spoke their heart's convictions. citing examples from their association with Prabhupada to prove that he had not rejected them. He was too kind. The sannyasis might feel rejected because of their own guilt, someone said, but they should not project their guilt on others. The false teachings, however, had dealt a blow from which many devotees would need time to recover. Newcomers at the festival were especially unsettled, but the cloud of gloom that had hung over New Vrindavan now lifted, thanks to Srila Prabhupada's timely letter. The sannyasis admitted their confusion. The GBC then phoned Kirtananda Swami in Tokyo and told him that Prabhupada's letter had resolved most of the problems, but that the sannyasis still held their misconceptions. Hearing this, Prabhupada felt his suspicions confirmed. Certain disciples had been contaminated by the poisonous philosophy from India. Consequently, material desires for power and control had overwhelmed them, even in Prabhupada's presence. Turning to Tamal Krishna, Sudama, and the three sannyasis with him, Prabhupada asked what they thought should be done. With the previous day's philosophic drilling still sharp in their minds, they suggested that anyone teaching Mayavadi philosophy should not be allowed to stay within ISKCON. Prabhupada agreed. If these sannyasis continue to preach Mayavadi philosophy, he said, they should not be allowed to stay in his temples but should go out and preach on their own. Tamal Krishna conveyed this message to the GBC in the US, and Prabhupada was satisfied that the problem would be adjusted. He had created his GBC to handle such matters. On September 2nd, Prabhupada wrote to Hamsadutta in Germany, regarding the poisonous effect in our society, it is a fact, and I know where from this poison tree has sprung up, and how it affected practically the whole society in a very dangerous form. But it does not matter. Prahlad Maharaj was administered poison, but it did not act. Similarly, Lord Krishna and the Pandavas were administered poison, and it did not act. I think in the same parampara system that the poison administered to our society will not act if some of our students are as good as Prahlad Maharaj. I have therefore given the administrative power to the governing body commission. To Hayagriva in New Vrindavan, Prabhupada wrote, I am very glad to know that the GBC is actively working to rectify the subversive situation, which has been weakening the very foundation of our society. All you members of the GBC, please always remain very vigilant in this connection so that our society's growth may go on unimpeded by such poisonous elements. Your preaching in New Vrindavan, as well as intensified study of our literatures with seriousness, is very much encouraging. Please continue this program with vigor and re-establish the solidity of our movement. From the beginning, I was strongly against the impersonalists, and all my books stressed on this point. So my oral instruction as well as my books are all at your service. Now, you GBC, consult them and get a clear and strong idea. Then there will be no more disturbance. The four sannyasis may bark, but still the caravan will pass. Prabhupada wrote Satswarupa in Boston. I am very glad to know that you are not affected by the propaganda of the sannyasis, that I am displeased with all the members of the society. I am never displeased with any member. The worst was over, Prabhupada thought. For months this problem had upset him and his writing. Relentlessly he had instructed his disciples for their own benefit and for the benefit of his movement. The disease had taken its toll, and that was unfortunate. But the devotees were being forced to turn to Prabhupada's books and apply their teachings, and that was the positive outcome. Now they should clearly understand the position of the spiritual master and never again be led astray by false philosophies or sentiment. Prabhupada's main business in Tokyo was with Dai Nippon. Considering him an important author and a venerable religious monk, they had provided him a car and apartment. Each morning they sent a private car to drive Prabhupada to Imperial Palace Park, where he would take his morning walk. Prabhupada liked the neatly planted trees and gravel walks, and he appreciated the habits of the Japanese people. As he would pass, elderly ladies would bow to him from the waist, and others would fold their hands respectfully, acknowledging his being a holy man. On the morning of Prabhupada's meeting with Dai Nippon, he came out of his apartment with Tamal Krishna and Devananda Maharaj and got into the back seat of a Dai Nippon company car. The car proceeded through the early morning streets, and Prabhupada chanted his Gayatri Mantra silently. A Dai Nippon junior executive escorted Prabhupada and his two disciples into an elevator and up to a spacious room with a long conference table. Prabhupada's guide cordially offered him a seat at the table, and Prabhupada sat down with Tamal Krishna and Devananda Maharaj on either side. Soon there entered Dai Nippon's 6 top executives, including the corporation president. Each stood behind his respective chair, and each in turn, beginning with the president, bowed slightly from the waist and presented his calling card. Addressing Prabhupada as Your Divine Grace, they introduced themselves, announced their posts, and took their seats. We are very honored to have you here, the president began. You are a great religious author, and it is our great privilege to be publishing your books. After the president had spoken briefly, tea was served. Prabhupada requested hot milk. Conversation was informal, and Prabhupada spoke of the importance of his mission and his Krishna conscious literature. No one discussed business, however, and the Dai Nippon executives soon excused themselves. They would meet again the next morning. When Prabhupada was again alone in the room with his disciples and the junior executive who had escorted him, he asked the young Japanese, So what is your goal in life? By way of the answer, the man gathered up all the business cards that lay scattered before Prabhupada on the table and stacked them, with the presidents on top, then the first vice presidents, and so on, putting his own card in its place on the bottom. He then dramatically removed his card from the bottom of the stack and slapped it on the top, a graphic answer to Prabhupada's question. Prabhupada smiled. To become president of the company, he said, was temporary. All material life was temporary. He explained on the basis of Bhagavad Gita that the body was temporary and that the self was eternal. All the identities and positions people hankered after were based on the bodily conception of life and would one day be frustrated. The purpose of life, therefore, was not to become the temporary president of a temporary corporation within the temporary material world, but to realize the eternal soul's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and gain eternal life. Prabhupada spoke for almost an hour while the man listened politely. At the next day's meeting, negotiations began. The conference room was different, the tables smaller, and three of Dai Nippon's international sales representatives sat opposite Prabhupada. Prabhupada presented his price, $135 per book. Oh, Your Divine Grace, one of the salesmen exclaimed, It is not possible for us to give this price. We will lose too heavily. We cannot afford it. They explained their position, quoting paper costs and other expenses. Prabhupada began to speak about his mission. ISKCON's book distribution, he said, was a charitable work for the benefit of all humanity. ISKCON distributed these books for whatever donations people were able to make, and he received no profit or royalties. It was spiritual education, the most valuable literature. In any case, Prabhupada said in closing, you deal with my secretary in this regard, and he sat back in his chair. The burden was on Tamal Krishna. Tamal Krishna began by saying that Prabhupada had been too kind because ISKCON could actually never pay such a high price. He then quoted a price 40 cents lower per book than Prabhupada's quote. Mr. Tamala, the salesman, were again upset. Please reconsider your point. A polite argument ensued. Suddenly, Prabhupada interrupted, presenting himself as an impartial third party. He said he would settle the difference that had arisen between his secretary and the salesman. I have heard both the sides, he said, and I feel that the price should be $1.25 per book. That's all. Yes, Your Divine Grace, the salesman agreed. That is right. After further negotiations, Prabhupada agreed on a contract that included a reprint of Volume 1 and a first printing of Volume 2 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, 2 issues of Back to Godhead, a Hindi issue of Back to Godhead, and a new book, Sri Ishopanishad. ISKCON had to pay only $5,000 cash, and Dai Nippon would deliver everything on credit. Prabhupada held a feast at his apartment for the Dai Nippon executives, who especially liked the samosas and pakoras. They presented Prabhupada with a watch and continued to see to his comfort during his stay in Tokyo. Prabhupada also met a Canadian-born Japanese boy, Bruce, who was seriously interested in Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada invited him to come and join him in India, and the boy eagerly agreed. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll pause here for today. Thank you so much for the kind attention, listening. Anybody has any thoughts, reflections from today's reading? Again, just like we were saying at the beginning, when we recite these prayers open the doors of our hearts. Prayers enable the grace to come in. Like Prabhupada is telling this little executive in Dai Nippon, that is not the goal, that is not the purpose of life, to take your card from the bottom and put it at the top to become the president. That is just a temporary position in a temporary company, in the temporary material world. Right? It's like a race outside, not just outside, even inside within ourselves. We are racing against ourselves, sometimes trying to do a number of things in limited time that we have. But really, when we pray, when we sing these prayers, when we follow the process given by Acharyas, the regulated the devotional practices that we do of the Navada Bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam, the Bhagavad Vidhi and the Pancharatrika Vidhi of worshipping deities. Just by these two tracks, our train will be on track and we can go back home. So in this race that we are, both with ourselves and with our outside world, we really have to add the G before the race, right? The G stands for including God, including the Lord in our lives. And we add G, G for Guru, G for God. When we add these two, then we get the grace, Kripa. We talk about Kripa, हमारे पास तो कृपा नहीं है, I don't have Kripa, I don't have mercy. But what are we doing to invoke that mercy? Right? So that is this process of Bhagavad Vidhi, of Pancharatrika Vidhi. When we do this sincerely, then the grace comes. Because the grace descends actually. It is not an ascending process. We cannot reach up to claim the grace, but it actually descends. It descends when we, with humility, with sincerity, with enthusiasm, with determination, and with patience, practice the process given by our acharyas. So again and again, Prabhupada is emphasizing the same point. And even though we were not there 50 years ago with Srila Prabhupada, his instructions remain eternally with us forever through his books. And when we read these books, that is the whole point, that we are associating with Srila Prabhupada, we are associating with his instructions, we are associating with his internal mood, what he really wanted all of us to follow, what he wanted ISKCON to be. Right? So these challenges, these turbulences, these are part of the world that we live in. It will always be there. Krishna says this world is dukhalayam ashashvatam. Dukh will keep coming, and ashashvatam. It is not eternal. It is temporary. But again, the medicine has been given by our acharyas. If we keep taking the medicine every day, day after day, day after day, day after day, then we will see how we are protected, we are shielded by the grace of the Guru and grace of the God. Okay, anyway, so those were some thoughts. Anything else anybody would like to share? Yes, Shama Karuna Mataji, anything? You have been practicing bhakti for decades. I'd like to hear your wisdom, anything that touched your heart, anything that you are following in your daily sadhana that you should bless us as a mother. Shama Karuna Mataji, anything you'd like to share? You're on mute if you're speaking. Okay, maybe you're away. All right, anybody else would like to share anything? Yesterday we had a very good book distribution and Prashadam distribution stall at the Krishna Leela Janmashtami festival, or Krishna Leela Janmashtami Bharatanatyam event at Walnut High School. So thank you to all the wonderful devotees who are continuing to tirelessly, selflessly take this kind of prashadam, so to say, of Srila Prabhupada and distributing prashadam and books to many new devotees, many new members who are there. Hopefully we'll see some of them at our Janmashtami festival this week and this weekend on Saturday at the center. Here Prabhupada is also celebrating Janmashtami in Japan, as we were reading this morning. So Prabhupada is teaching us how to celebrate these festivals like Vyasa Puja, Janmashtami. So again, thanks to all the coordinated efforts, to all our wonderful group of volunteers. This moment that Prabhupada has given us, we all should collectively, joining hands, take it forward in a mood of togetherness, in a mood of unity. Right? So it's wonderful that we are collectively taking ISKCON Cincinnati forward so that we can have the blessings and the grace of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Radha Krishna on us. All right, thank you so much for your kind association this morning. As always, we'll conclude with Vaishnava Pranam prayers to thank all our predecessor acharyas and all the Vaishnavas on this call, and all the Vaishnavas who are not on this call, but with us spiritually, in spirit, across all our ISKCON Cincinnati and all ISKCON centers around the world. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Have a great day. Hare Krishna.